What
All
is
right.
going on? Welcome back to
Hey, how are
Jiu-Jitsu
you?
Outlet. I'm sitting down with the two Jasons. We have Professor Jason Yerrington sitting down here. Professor Jason is a third degree black belt underneath the legendary Cyborg. And then we also have Jason Witham here, a one stripe white belt. And I love this contrast here. We're going to get into talking about mental health and autism. But first, both you guys, thank you for coming on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about your academy? You were Professor Jason, you were getting into this before the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your academy and what you're working on these days?
The name of our academy is Ohana Academy. We're located in San Antonio, Texas. We opened up at the beginning of 2009, and we've been kind of going since then. Now we are getting ready to open up our fifth location here in San Antonio, off of 1604 in Calabria. Really excited about that one. Currently, we have four locations right now with one of the largest student bases in the United States. We've been really blessed. The size, most people don't get to have academies that are like 10,000 square feet. Our HQ location is 10,000. We're building a location off of Blanco. It's going to be 47,000 square feet, like one of the largest facilities in the intercontinental United States of America. So, we've had big dreams since 2009, and every single day we've been really trying to push and really change one life at a time by using jiu-jitsu and the mats and the benefits that we get for being on there and investing in our failures. And it's been a beautiful thing. We've been blessed to grow a good, healthy community that's been producing a lot of really good fruit. So I'm excited to be here today with our student Jason. So I can't wait to talk about some of the things that we're going to talk about, and looking forward to it.
Uke Jason. Before the show, we determined you're going to be Uke Jason, and Professor Jason's Professor Jason. Uke Jason, I want to hear from you, man. Can you tell us a bit about jiu-jitsu? Just, you're obviously pretty new in your journey. You're also
Yes.
on the autism spectrum, just like me. Can you share with us a little bit about how has jiu-jitsu helped your mental health since you started training?
Well, one, I'd have to say the camaraderie. It is instantaneous here. People, it's intimidating to walk in, but people are friendly. We tap fists. We go to it, and a couple minutes later, we're friends again. Even though it might seem a little adversarial at first, everything that people coach you right through it. And I've never had that experience before. And there's a high that goes with it. Like as you probably know, like I'm always kind of like distracted, little squirrels going off and left and right. But once you're engaged with somebody right in front of you, it shuts off all the outside noise. And, only thing I can think of is who's in front of me and what we're doing there. So I love it. I have to say it's really been helping,
Yeah, the same for me. It like you said, it focuses your energy. It focuses you. It doesn't matter what happened, before training. You can come to the mats. You can put it aside for a minute, and you can get out some energy. Like that's something a lot of people don't understand, is that stress and these sort of things, they build up in your body, and we need an outlet, and that's what this show is all
yes.
about, is how jiu-jitsu is the outlet for all this stuff. But Professor Jason, I want to hear from you, man. Like, since you started training, obviously you're a third degree black belt, so you're kind of on the other end of this spectrum. Can you tell us a bit about what has jiu-jitsu done for you over the course of those years?
Oh man, I started jiu-jitsu, man, so long ago. Golly, my life has gone so far since then. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was a young man. I was a single dude. I was involved in MMA, was fighting, and really, I ran into jiu-jitsu because I played college basketball and was really looking for something. Wasn't involved in a fraternity or anything. Was in college, and when you get done with your eligibility, you kind of feel lost a little bit. Like all of your energies have been into playing basketball and playing it at the highest level that you could. That as soon as that's removed, you kind of feel like you've lost that camaraderie. You've lost that competitive vibes. You're always looking for what's next, right? So went to a tattoo parlor with my point guard at the time, and I watched Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner duke it out, the Ultimate Fighter finale, and I was like, oh, I'm that size, I'm that weight, I'm 6'3", I'm 205. So I Googled a gym, and 2 days later went, did my first class. Actually didn't even do a class. I just went in and said, I want to fight. And so the guy handed me 2 pieces of paper. I signed out both of them. Didn't really read them because I'm a young dude. Well, come to find out, I came back later that evening and got totally destroyed by a bunch of 130-pound dudes that were just ripping my arms off. Actually threw one guy's head through the sheetrock wall on accident while he had me in an armbar. And that night, while I was eating food, I got a phone call from a promoter who said, hey, is this Jason Yerrington? I said, yeah. Who's this? He said, well, blah, blah, blah. I'm a promoter. We saw your picture and your name up on a website. We want to know if you'd like to be the main event in Waco, Texas. I just did my first day. Okay. I had no prior martial arts training, no nothing, no wrestling. I played basketball. That was like end all be all for me up until that point in my life. And here's this guy asking me if I want to fight in Waco, Texas against a guy named Cale Grady. So I said, yes. I show up the next day to my professor. Didn't even know what his name was really because I'd only seen him once. And I was like, hey guys, I'm fighting in Waco, Texas in 4.5 weeks. I'm the main event. And they were like, what? So apparently the guy had given me my license. I filled it out and took a picture. What I thought was for the gym. Actually, he put my picture up on a. So anyway, I went there, knocked out in the first round because, I really wasn't prepared at all. And I was hooked. Like, I couldn't let that be my story. Couldn't let that be my legacy. And so from that moment on, I was training like 3 times a day until, turned the things around, fought a bunch more times. I've won the world championships at every belt, white through black, and really just was really impressed with not only how I was able to handle the stress of life, the turmoil of life, the obstacles of life, and was more blown away by that than by anything else. And from that moment on, I wanted to create an atmosphere and an opportunity for other people to come and experience that as well. The unconscious adaptability that starts to grow when you're on the mat is impressive, and you're not aware of it. You're not aware of it until you find yourself at like a car place, whatever they call those things. They're gonna fix your car, and some guy's trying to haggle you for price, and you're calm and you're cool and you're kind of like thinking it through. Whereas before, you might not be able to like form complete sentences because you're kind of getting so upset and flustered, and your blood pressure starts to rise. And these are some of the benefits that people don't really talk about, but you experience them firsthand after you've trained for at least 3 months or more. Things just start to kind of like simmer, and the perspective that you view the world starts to change a little bit. And I thought that was super powerful. So it's something I wanted to share with as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Like, you're hitting on some really big things here. And I just love, again, this juxtaposition here, because we have Professor Jason here on the one hand, like you just said, you're world caliber grappler, 3rd degree black belt, been a world champion, competed at the highest levels. And then we have Jason, who is our kind of total beginner. But I want to highlight one thing that both of you said, like when in your answers, you both brought up camaraderie. You both brought up the team. Like, that seems to be kind of a really consistent theme here, that's important. That's what people are looking for. So I want to like talk about that just a little bit more. I want to hear from Jason first. Like, when you're talking about the camaraderie and the team, like, I guess, put differently, a lot of people do find it intimidating to like walk into a jiu-jitsu school. What do you think that we could do to make it easier for beginners like you to come in and be a part of that team? Like, is there anything that jiu-jitsu needs to be thinking about?
I don't know about something that would make it easier, but I know the experience I've had with just being with this academy is like there's a lot of people that go to Ohana. We have like multiple locations, and I work security at supermarkets, and occasionally I'll see somebody walk by with an Ohana shirt, and I cannot help but to pipe up like Jiu-Jitsu Ohana, and have like a 30-40 minute conversation with like someone who's a complete stranger. We instantly become brothers, and I'll work through like. Also, I'm just discovering the Kimura trap, and he's like, "Oh, you got to watch out for the arm bar," and I totally know what he means. And people are strangers is just walking by like in awe, like what's going on? These guys are so excited. And I may never even see that person again, but we shared something there. And I think that we could just branch out and share with other people. Like, my wife is now looking at jiu-jitsu, where she wouldn't before. My daughter is going to get into it, but just be a personal spokesperson, I guess, for jiu-jitsu is what I've already started doing. I pass out cards. I probably bug people to come in, but I'm like, you just come in once or twice, you probably will be hooked. And I know it's scary. If I can do it, you definitely can do it. So that's my spiel on that. I think that, yeah.
I love that. And man, I'll talk on this a little more in a second, but I want to hear from Professor Jason first too. Like, is there anything you do at Ohana to like cultivate this sort of a atmosphere where people come in, they feel welcome, and you're creating the atmosphere that's obviously positive. So like, is there any secrets here you can share with maybe another instructor who might be listening?
Well, okay, there would be a lot, but I would think number one, first and foremost, is invest in your staff. They're going to mirror you. And so a lot of times, there's a lot that goes to running a school, and sometimes making time each day to like connect with your staff. And so what we do is every single day we do staff training first thing in the morning. From 8 to 10, we have our staff come in and we just kill each other on the mats. After that, we finish it with like a little bit of character development, to where for about 10 to 15 minutes, we work on whatever our power forward of the month. This month is influence. And so we talk to them about, their platform and what we need to see from them. And, we really focus on three basic human needs. Every human, in my belief, I didn't read this or anything else like that, but I believe that every human being wants to be seen. They want to know that you see them, right? Eye contact, right? This means a lot. They also want to be heard. They want to know that their voice means something, that it's not just like meaningless noise that's in the background, right? Validate them, let them know that you hear them. And then three, and this is probably the most important one, they want to know that they're loved, right? So if you can let someone know that I see you, let someone know that you hear them, and let them know that you love them, man, immediately there's going to be a deep connection, which two things have to happen for that. You have to have vulnerability, need acceptance. But most of the time when people come in, they're not ready to be vulnerable. They've got walls up, they've got their own paradigm of what they thought jiu-jitsu was, or MMA, or Muay Thai, or boxing. And so with those three things, you can start to break down those walls. And then all of a sudden, the vulnerability of the person comes out. And that's going to happen on the mat. If you get them on the mat, all of a sudden, they're stripped down to like the persona of whoever they thought they were is not there, and who they really are emerges. And then it's so important that the instructor, the training partner, the people that are in that class are doing those three things, because then connections start to form. And when those connections start to form, all of a sudden that camaraderie just happens organically. And the more that you can cultivate those three things throughout humans, man, it's going to be a positive thing. And really making sure that the punching, the kicking, the choking, that's secondary. The most important stuff is the connections that are made. Is if I have my friend Jason. It doesn't matter if he's a white belt or a black belt or even a kid. So 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, because they don't have the social constructs that adults do. And so sometimes you'll see connections and pathways that are like totally something I would have never thought, something I would have never put together. But again, it all goes back to every human being wants to be seen, heard, and loved. And if I can have my staff doing that above everything else, then at the end of the day, we're going to be an inclusive academy, not an exclusive academy. You don't want to come into a fight club and then like wonder who's got your target or next guy that you're going to have to fight. Then your walls are only going to get stronger. They're going to be reinforced, because now all of a sudden you don't want to let someone know your weakness. But instead, if you let someone know like your weakness first, and you're inclusive and you share where you failed and how you're struggling, and let's try this, man, someone who's brand new, kind of like they get drawn to that, they get attracted to that. So with our staff, we're always working on 3 C's: competency, character, and connection. If we can work on those 3 C's, man, like you're gonna have very strong connections and relationships that are built between the students, the training partners, the instructors, and the professor. And it's something that will go beyond the mats. It'll start to trickle into society, to where kind of like what Jason's talking about. It'll trickle into your place of work. It'll trickle into your significant other, your family, and everything else. And then that's when the power of what happens on the mat can compound and really start to affect your life in a positive way.
Man, I wrote down so much of what you said. I love this. Like you're that's beautiful, man. Honestly, like the way that you express this, I think more people need to hear like the way you think about this, because yeah, it's so important. Is everything is like, it's not about, oh, can you triangle choke the fuck out of every human you encounter? Like that's great. That's amazing. But really it's about like, how does it help you in your career or in your relationships or whatever? And that's a big part of why I wanted to do this show, because like I've been doing it now for 12 years, and the longer I do it, the more I realize, the more I talk to people like you who've been doing it for a long time, the reason we stick is because we have the community, or because we see all these benefits we get. Because if I don't go, I feel like I'm going crazy, you know what I mean? Like it's literally like I almost have to go, and it's crazy. I don't know if you heard, like, quick side note, the episode we did about like the science behind jiu-jitsu with
Yeah.
Musin Corbry. Great episode. But the long and short of it is like, jiu-jitsu produces all these chemicals in your brain, like dopamine, oxytocin gets produced from the touch. Like all sorts of chemicals are getting stimulated in your brain. So there is actually a part of jiu-jitsu that stimulates these kind of feel-good hormones like serotonin, dopamine, the thing that happens when you achieve a goal that gets released whenever you submit someone. You get a big rush if you get promoted, like you feel like because you've accomplished this big thing, but it's actually, there's science behind it, So one of the things that there's science behind, this is what I'm kind of leading into, is community. I mean, we saw this during the pandemic, like so many people were lonely and isolated. So many people suffered from depression. I've had times in my life where I've been extremely lonely, like after my divorce. And it's miserable. Like you just feel like you're going crazy. Honestly, I was so lonely that I would put on podcasts because I just wanted to like feel like I was chilling with someone, because I didn't have any people in my life at the point, because I was like, oh well, I'll hang out with Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, might as well. Just because I was like, well, what else am I gonna do? But thankfully I'm past that time. But what I'm getting at here is, again, going back to like the team. All of this leading to this question to Uke Jason. This is directed. People with autism, man, really struggle with relationships, and they struggle with building a community, and finding a family. You got a family, like that's huge. So you're someone who, you have a family. You're in a community, right? Like, let's say there's someone listening to this and maybe they're on the spectrum and they struggle with that sort of stuff. Like, do you have any wisdom about like, how to build relationships as an autistic person?
Now you probably, I'm one of those chameleons. Like most people would not know that I'm autistic, and when I get overstimulated, I just find a space somewhere and hide out. I decided, and I kind of spoke to my wife about this, that I was going to come in here and not mask and just, tell people as I'm rolling with them. Like, it felt a little awkward at first. Before we start, I just want to let you know that I'm autistic. I'm on the spectrum, and you might see me stimming or something. And a few people were a little confused at first, but most people are really helpful. They like, if I get overstimulated, I do it, after a couple rolls. Sometimes if I've been smashed by somebody, I'll start to like stim a lot, and someone will just step up and say, hey, why don't you just take a minute, just relax, or we can just work some drills or something. And it's so positive. Like I've never been able to open up to people like that before. And here it's very easygoing. It's they understand, and they don't go any easier on me once you roll, though. By the way, I get smashed quite a bit, but not because of like me being overstimulated, just me being a low ranked white belt. I think that I think this is something positive a lot of autistic people could do if they, just come up front with it, not mask, and just, I don't have to mask here. I'm able to roll. I'm able to function with everybody else, most of the time. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry, I went on a tangent.
Oh yeah,
there.
no, man, that was the tangent I was looking for, bro. But the chameleon aspect of autism is huge. Like people don't realize that it's not that autistic people aren't weird. It's just we're really good at hiding the how different we actually view the world. It's like just as a young kid, I learned kind of how to fit in and adapt. For me, it was like going to church. I was raised in like a really fundamentalist church group, and I was at church like every day. So I just learned how to just kind of fit in with the crowd and speak the lingo. That's a big thing. When I was in the Army too, you pick up on the lingo. You know, and I've been really good at that. That was like a big thing for me as an autistic person, like a part of the chameleon-ish. Like I always try to pick up on how the other person talks. You know, like if you talk a certain way, I'm going to try to mirror how you talk, because I'm just like, oh, that's how people talk, right? You know, I'm like a computer, like programming me. But what you're talking about, I've made it a point lately to be like, I'm just going to talk how Paul talks. You know, I'm just going to learn more about how I talk. I'm not going to talk how, you know, I observed humans speaking in my notebook and I wrote down. You know, so it's huge, man. I think communication is everything. Like that's something I've learned with autism. It's like if you're having a panic attack, tell someone, you know, be like, hey, I need to sit down. Like I gotta relax here. So you know, going back to Professor Jason, it's great you have an atmosphere that someone like Uke Jason can come in and feel comfortable doing that. So like again, I just want to talk a little more about that. Like, you know, you've trained with Cyborg. Cyborg is obviously one of the greatest competitors in jiu-jitsu of all time. Is there anything that you observe from watching him that he does to like build this team? Like, is there anything you kind of took away from him that you try to apply at your academy in terms of the team building specifically?
With Professor, you know, he's very generous. He's extremely generous, and he's a great speaker. You know, very charismatic, and people are drawn to Cyborg, right? And what's really cool is he never pushes people away, and I think that's part of it. Is this inclusive? Everyone has a place, everyone has an opportunity, and he does. He makes space for everyone on the mat. He's very, very good at that. He's really good at connecting with people too. And I think that's something that I've tried to take from him, is just our ability to connect. But I also kind of want to talk a little bit, because while he was saying this, you know, jiu-jitsu breeds a little bit of what y'all are talking about. You know, you learn the first two most important rules in probably every academy that I've ever been to is if it hurts, what are you supposed to do? Tap, right? And, you know, if someone taps, you know, that's it. Stop, right? So you learn very early how to self-advocate. Okay, what you take is up to you. Does that make sense? And so, like, just that first bridge they have to cross. Most of the times at a church group, you will never self-advocate. You will never say, "Hey guys, you know, I'd like to do this," because you don't want anyone to make fun of you or do anything. But we all agree immediately to that, right? And so, already we all have this language that is self-advocation. And so every time you do it, you're starting to learn how, in a vulnerable moment, how to say, that's it, I'm done, good job, that hurt way too much, okay, let's go again. And through that, you start to build this muscle, this self-advocation. So eventually you start saying, hey, before we start, you know, I just want to let you know right now with my right knee. I have 2 partial tears in my meniscus, but I would really like to still roll, but can you please watch out for that? Whereas, like, you're in a church group, you show up, you have some kind of like thing that maybe you're a little insecure about, and all of a sudden the self-advocation doesn't happen because that muscle hasn't been used, and you don't know if you're in a community to where that's acceptable or not. And so, you know, we don't want to look vulnerable to a group of people that we don't know yet. And so because of that, becomes an obstacle to where they never truly know who you are, and you never truly know who they are, where that's not possible on the mat. You know, like, we have these built-in things to where it's beautiful for human nature to actually coexist, where communication happens without speaking. You know, like, I always tell people that you know who that person is after you roll with them. You know, and first rolls are always different than the last 10,000 rolls that you're going to do with that person, right? And so you start to learn how that person is going to respond to trauma, how that person is going to respond to obstacles, how that person is going to handle success, how that person is going to be when he's rewarded. And so now all of a sudden, without speaking to that person at all, you know them. Now all of a sudden you feel comfortable to say, hey, look, you know, like, I'm actually on the spectrum, and I struggle with autism. You know, like, I just want you to know that, so that when we move forward, if I'm doing something a little weird, it is what it is. But that also is rooted back to the tap that's been happening for who knows how long. And that's why this is so beautiful. You know, like, if you took any other thing, if we were doing dance and we showed up and I said, hey guys, we're all going to do a dance class today, I guarantee you this, I wouldn't feel comfortable to let you know about my inadequacies, and you wouldn't feel comfortable letting me know about your inadequacies. In fact, we probably sit there staring at each other until someone who was confident at dancing was going to like try to pull us in there and get us going. But that's not how jiu-jitsu works. Jiu-jitsu comes and you are who you are, and we start with that first basic communication, tap. And once you learn how to surrender, once you learn how to tap, once you learn how to say, uncle, that's it, I'm done. Already you're embracing a vulnerable state with someone. You're saying, I don't know, that's it, I'm done. Can you please teach me? And now like that bridge is crossed if you're at a good place. If you're not in a good place, then I feel bad for you. And that's sad. You know, martial arts gyms, you know, back in the day, it used to be power-based, not influence-based. And power-based was do what I say because I said, right? I'm the black belt, I know it all, just do it, right? Whereas now, I feel that this new wave of jiu-jitsu is more influence-based. It's more of like, hey, let's get to know each other. We're a relationship, you know, and eventually I'm gonna like sway you, right? And not, you know, not because of my accolades or my resume, you're just gonna do what I say. But it all gets rooted back to that tap. And it's a basic fundamental communication that we kind of all agree upon. And then we build upon that with our relationship.
I love what you said there. And I just want to like talk about one thing you said. It's almost like you have to tap. Tapping is like accepting your death in a way. Like if you tap for the first time, like let's say your first day at jiu-jitsu and you get put in a rear naked choke and you have to tap. There's a part of you that just confronted death, was like, oh, holy crap, I just almost died. And it wasn't, you know that it wasn't real, but there's a biological part inside of you that just confronted death, basically. And also you had to set aside your ego. You know, you've seen as well as me, like people who maybe don't want to tap on their first day, even if you got like a really locked in armbar or something, because they're still trying to like wiggle out of it. And you're just like, dude, just chill. You know, you might want to tap here. And then they do tap, but it might take them a second, you know, so they might struggle. You have to almost like set your ego aside for a second. And you have to, again, you got to have this little minor confrontation with death. And then you get to experience all those benefits that you just talked about. You know, it's like, it's so powerful that you're right, dancing and nothing else has the tap other than combat martial arts. Like, that's really it. And man, I've never thought about that before. You know, I never realized that. That's a tap. It's a powerful thing.
It really is. And you see it transform people's lives. You know, so it doesn't matter if it's a strong guy or a weak guy. Those hormonal responses, the biological responses, are in all of us. So we're all experiencing it. And everyone gets humbled on the mat. It doesn't matter where you're at in that journey. There's always some moment that happens to where you're having to go back to like experiencing those hormones and those biological responses in your body. So it's really, really cool that we have we didn't talk about it. No one said, hey, here are the rules, you know, we're going to do this. No one explains this, but instinctively, we all start following this pattern because of our hormones and the way that we've been bred for like thousands and thousands and thousands of years of survival and everything else. And so it's so cool to have a thing to where you can actually be who you are. The mask of society is removed. I might not be that. I wore a mask too, you know, and the only time I felt I was who I really was when I was on the mats. Because when you go back to college, you go to your job, you kind of put that, I'm the cool guy, or I'm the jock, I'm the athlete, or I'm this, or whatever it was, right? But when you're on the mat, those things don't amount to anything. They don't help you defend yourself in any way, shape, or form. And so real quick, you find out like, man, these things are flimsy. These things don't hold a lot of value. And you slowly distance yourself from the things that were the masks that helped you, that you clung to in society to kind of get through bullying, high school, college, first day at a new job, all those different things. But when someone has kind of reached that purple belt point, and I'm not saying it has to, but time in matters. You now have created a comfortable amount of distance from the things that you clung to in high school and college and everything else, to where you start to evolve as a human, to where, like you were saying, what's the voice that Paul really has, right? Who's Jason really? And who am I really? You start to like find out who you are all over again. And it's such a beautiful process. I have to watch people do it every single day. It's the best job in the world.
I love that, man. And hey, Zoom is actually going to kick us off here in just a minute, but I feel like what you just said kind of sinks beautifully into yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your academy? Like, tell if there's anyone living close to where you are. Could I just love to hear a little bit from both of you about your academy and just kind of what you've both gotten out of being there, or Professor Jason, in your case, like, you know, running the academy. What's that been like? So again, Zoom's going to kick us off though in like 3 minutes, but last question, guys. Last question.
Well, do you want to go first, Jay?
Yeah, I can go first. What has the academy done for me? Well, being at the white belt level, I'm chiseling away a lot of like character flaws. Things that I've kind of built around myself to protect myself, and I'm becoming. I think I'm getting to the core of myself. But that's the beginner phase. You know, I'm tapping a lot, and the victories, the small victories, are really small and very infrequent. You know. So I think I'm at that, like, the stripping away phase. So it's going to be a little time before I really know who I am on the mat. And I think Ohana has helped me out so far for the first phase. But that's all I have right there.
And for me, you know, one, like, I love having Jason here, right? He was really cool because not everyone is as vocal, right, as he was about some of the struggles and things that he does and goes through. But that really helps us out because, you know, one, it made me feel good, right? Hey, man, this guy feels comfortable enough to let us know, like, what he's struggling with and what he's doing. And so it's really cool because in the class that he goes to, I mean, everyone, there's like 8 or 10 guys that are like, hey, you want to just drill now? Well, can I help you with this? What are you working on here? So, like, one, that was validation of like a job well done in that class, of that culture and that community being there, you know, that he felt comfortable enough to come to me and say, hey, I just want to let you know this is what I'm struggling with. So if you see me doing this or whatever, it's because of that. And then the other side of it is actually watching him go through it, you know, like, because to me, those are the victories that are important, not the armbar that he gets, but when he's going through an episode and he's struggling, you know, it's really cool to witness it, not because he's struggling, because he comes back the next day and the next day. And so when you see those moments kind of get a little less frequent, it's awesome. You know, like, hearing him talk the other day, he was like, I'm actually going to start in the positions that trigger my anxiety and trigger my episodes. So that way I get through it a little bit more. And it's like, man, because it mirrors some of the things that I went through. And I got to share how, like, you know, when I first started, there was a guy that was like 450 pounds. No one would roll with him. So I would just let him sit in side control on me. And it was horrible. But I had a fear. I had a claustrophobic, like, his skin would form to my face and I would, like, I couldn't breathe, you know, and he was so big, you couldn't push him away. And, you know, that feeling of not being enough, that was something that in the beginning was really hard for me. Like you said, like, I used to view it as like I failed my family if I tapped, like, in the very beginning, because I had a very skewed view of violence. And most people do. They don't understand what a true violent situation is because of movies and society and the way we kind of dramatize it to be this beautiful scripted and beautiful thing. It's not, it's dirty, it's grimy, it's nasty. And the more you kind of embrace that and kind of embrace that grind, those were the true victories start to lie. And so watching him embrace the grind of his own